Hi. I want to talk about the hunger scale. How many of you, raise your right or left hand, how many of you were really excited about the hunger scale as I described the science behind hunger in the brain and in the body and how the whole, the muscles and the skeletal system metabolizes energy. Get really hopeful about the hunger scale, right? And I present it as basically a skeletal system to then work on these emotional attachments to food, etc., right? Bad habits, emotional relationships with dieting and food, blah, blah, blah. How many of you said, sweet, I'm going to do it. I'm going to listen to the hunger scale, stop weighing, and I'm going to be cured, right? So essentially, you went into it, tried it out, and found that it was really hard. Without weighing, you noticed that you gave yourself some leniency in the hunger scale to always kind of fit your needs and demands, right? And then if you were hungrier, you'd feel like, oh my God, there's something wrong. Maybe I need a diet. Oh my God, I'm afraid I'm hungry. Maybe I'm eating too much. Oh crap, I feel bad. Oh, I'll just have to fix it tomorrow, right? How many of you tried the hunger scale out, kinda, but found it wasn't enough to fix your problems, right? Wasn't enough to change your desires to eat under certain circumstances. It may have worked sometimes. You might still use it sometimes. But under certain circumstances, screw the hunger scale. Back to needing a diet, because the hunger scale isn't enough to get rid of your excessiveness. It's not. It's enough to rebalance you. But the hunger scale isn't enough to make up for damage done, let's see, a night binge eating. It's not going to. If you do that for let's say a weekend or a week on vacation, is the hunger scale really going to, fix that type of damage? Well, it might if you actually did it. It might if you actually held yourself accountable to it. It might if you were patient. That's the problem. If you don't have the patience to let your body do what's best for your hormonal environment, you are going to enforce your demands on the body with something more aggressive, with something that matches your desperation to recover from your excessive eating. So you still have bulimia. Oh, God damn it. The protocol won't fix that. Crap. Neither will the hunger scale. It's unfortunate. Because if it could, it would be really easy. And everybody would do it. But you know what? You know what the hardest part is? The hardest part is the part where you have to take responsibility. No one likes to do that. Who do you know that's willing to admit they have needs and wants that are selfish, that are kind of narcissistic? How many people do you know who are really selfish and narcissistic in terms of thinking that it's okay to abuse others? How many of those people do you know love to admit when they're wrong? Because if you really know someone like that, they'll admit that they're sorry, but it's only because they're trying to manipulate you back into the relationship so they can do it again. Sounds like a diet, right? So you'll apologize. I'm sorry, body. I won't do that again to you. I'm going to enforce this nasty ass restrictive diet because, I binged and I need you to not be fat because that makes me hate you. So the hunger scale, hunger schmale, right? Yeah, the truth hurts. It does. It does for everybody. So at some point, you're going to have to hurt if you really want to stop enabling yourself. You need to stop relying on something outside of you to fix these things. The hunger scale isn't going to fix your desire. You have to do that. Why do you think people come to me? It's not because I'm an enabler. It's not because I make them feel all comfortable about the situation. It's because I know and can read when people have lied to themselves and they believe their lies. I have no problem saying, hey, you're lying to yourself. That's a justification. You're rationalizing this. The whole point of the method I use, which I don't know how many of you have actually done it. Maybe a small handful, and I know your names because you've paid me. This is not easy. You have to be fully responsible for your own bullshit, and you have to be willing to hold yourself accountable and to go through the sadness and to go through the withdrawals from dieting. I mean, it takes a withdrawal to stop dieting because you have to really accept the consequences of your behavior. So if you need to diet to fix the consequences of your behavior and you're withheld from that diet, you're going to get mad. That's what happens when a drug addict is withheld their drug. They get angry. They can be very volatile and dangerous. You're the same way. As soon as you know you want your drug, you're going to go into that weird state of mind that is a little messed up. I remember it very clearly. I see it in people all the time. I had a patient just yesterday who came in with pretty severe symptoms of neurosis. She's been binging, has done the protocol multiple times on her own. She came to the clinic saying, I want the emotional rehab. Can we start the protocol today? And the first thing I said to her is, well, no, we need to do some work first. I mean, she's willing to pay over $2,000 to work with me, right? And I'm saying, okay, well, we've got to go through these upfront steps first. And her response was a panic attack. You want to know why? Because she needed her drug. She wanted the diet. She couldn't handle the pendulum, what had happened to her body with her binging, right? She's cool with weight gain. She's cool binging, but sitting in the center made her so uncomfortable. I couldn't work with her. Unfortunately, I said, if we're going to work together, I'm comfortable working at your pace, but it's going to be uncomfortable, right? And the first thing is I'm not going to hand you a prescription of a hormone that's like inflammatory that you've used yourself on your own multiple times as a purge. I cannot, for the sake of the doctors that prescribe for patients who go through my work, they'd be pissed at me if I allowed a prescription with someone who had the type of fragility, psychological fragility. They would have been so mad at me. I'm not going to abuse my doctors or the doctors I work for. I'm not going to abuse their prescription rights, right? So I got to be able to know when to say no. And it was really sad. It was really actually a very gentle session. If you had been there, you'd be so shocked at how gentle I was, but I could tell this girl was very fragile. Anyway, so I had to gently suggest a psychological rehab clinic where she's in-house. You could just see. And then once we got off our session, she actually tried to convince Denise, who is my business partner, to give her the prescription. It's kind of like a drug addict. That's kind of I'm assuming many of you are the same way. You just don't have any boundaries. I mean, how many of you are actually paying for help or willing to actually invest in someone else's opinion? Well, that's the other thing, right? If you don't want to change, why would you spend that type of money for help when you don't want any help? You actually kind of like the drama of your insanity. I mean, it's kind of fun. You got to admit, it's kind of fun to give yourself the freedom and the euphoria of not having to restrict anything. That is so much fun. I remember when I used to choose to binge. Oh my God. I've smoked a lot of weed in my life. I've never been higher than the moment I decide, yes, I'm going to binge. It's so amazing. I wish we could get together and talk about how amazing that moment is. The binge sucks, but the moment you choose you're going to binge, oh my God, it's crazy exciting. Your heart starts to palpitate. It's almost like the feeling of love or limerence in the moment you decide I'm going to binge. Oh my, it's like falling in love. I mean, it's an amazing euphoric brain chemical crazy action. It's like a period of time you don't have to have shame or guilt. Could you imagine? Yeah, you got to want to give that up. The hunger scale's not going to do that for you. The hunger scale's going to keep you away from that crazy euphoria. And the hunger scale isn't going to make up for the consequences. It's hilarious if you actually thought that the hunger scale or the protocol and not weighing would be a good solution. But you know what? If you found that out the hard way, that's what you got to do. That's part of the learning curve. So, at some point, when you're tired, you're just exhausted of this crap, right? Where, God, that euphoria of the binge, it, at some point, is going to be not worth the suffering of the diet. You know, initially, the diet is euphoric, too, because it's what provided you that freedom to binge, right? So the euphoria that you get from the decision to binge is connected to the diet you're going to use to fix the damages. So once you connect to the diet or the purge after the binge, it's the same excitement. It is almost even more euphoria, right? So if anybody were to get in the way of your diet, similar to how I was basically a roadblock to this girl who obviously had issues, to her purge, you can get angry, you can get mad, and you know what? It's not my fault. It's not my fault. As much as you can put your blame on me or put the blame on the hunger scale, didn't work for that, didn't work for you. As much as you profess your need for a diet, at some point, it's going to wear you down. At some point, you're going to have to pull yourself out of the neurosis of that because it's miserable. You know, eventually the binge and the freedom to excessively eat from the compensation of a diet, that euphoria isn't worth the suffering of the actual diet. Because eventually, even if the diet is euphoric at the beginning, it eventually becomes almost punishing and depriving. And it actually, because it's only set up to compensate for your binging, I mean, it's going to be pretty intense, right? I mean, it's got to be pretty severe. So in reality, once you're done with that pendulum swing of neurosis with your binge euphoria, with the diet euphoria marriage, it's like, whoa, who would sign up for that crap, right? Who would sign up and actually live that way? It's so difficult. It's not realistic, and it doesn't take into account, you know, a dynamic life of family. I mean, when are you going to get real with this whole belief system around responsibility? When you're ready to take responsibility, what happens is you grieve the euphoria of the binge. There is a grieving period. I remember clearly when I decided I am never going to diet again, because that is where my misery came from, right? That's why I was going to kill myself. When I decided I would never diet again, there was a period of grief about that excitement to binge. It really, it's kind of sad. I remember it. It was like, oh, those gas station pastries. It was just like, I did have a little sadness over that euphoria. It was intense. But you know what? The period of time that it took for me to hold myself responsible really was fast. I think because of, you know, the circumstance. But the sooner you hold yourself accountable to actually listen to hunger, regardless of your weight, no matter what, and for a long period of time, you'll get it. You'll get it. You will. But you know what? Some of you just need to struggle for longer. You need to gain more weight. You need to do it again. You need to do it again. You need to do it again. You need to get more miserable, and that's okay. There was a curve for me when I did it. It was a big curve. But before that curve, it was a long, drawn-out death. So, okay, have a good weekend.